Cana in the Galilee, Cana in the Galilee, Cana in the Galilee. Master Jesus turned water into wine. We're starting a new series today, all of Jesus' miracles. Jesus, his mother Mary, and his disciples were invited to a wedding in Cana. Mary went to Jesus and said, they've run out of wine. It will be an utter disgrace if there is no wine at a wedding. Jesus said, it is not yet my time. But Mary told the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. There were 6 water jugs there. Jesus said, go and fill them with water and give some to the MC to taste. They did that. They gave it to the MC. The MC went to the bridegroom and said, wow, people usually bring out the good wine first. And then when people are drunk, they bring out the bad wine. But you have kept the good wine until the end. That's Jesus' first miracle. After Jesus left Samaria, he went back to Cana of the Galilee, where he turned water into wine. A very important official came to him and begged him, Jesus, please come and heal my son. He is going to die. He lived in Capernaum. Jesus said, go, your son will live. This is very important. The Bible says, and the man believed. So he started going back to Capernaum. It's about 20 miles. On his way, his servants met him and said, Master, your son is well. He asked them, what time did he get better? They said, about 1 o'clock yesterday. And then the man remembered that was the exact time Jesus said, go, your son will live. That's Jesus' second miracle. Then Jesus went to Capernaum, where he started teaching in the synagogue. In the synagogue was a man with an evil spirit, and the man shouted with a loud voice, I know who you are, Jesus of Nazareth. Have you come to destroy us, thou Holy One of God? But Jesus told the evil spirit, shut up and come out of him. And the evil spirit came out of the man with a loud voice, and the man was not harmed. And the people who were there marveled and said, who is this man, that even the evil spirits obey his voice? And that's Jesus' third miracle. After they left the synagogue, they went to Simon's house, where they saw Simon's mother-in-law in bed with a high fever. Not just an ordinary fever. The Bible says a high fever, which means her temperature will be above 38 degrees. She'll be shivering, she'll be achy, she's got a headache, she's in bed. They told Jesus, do something. Jesus holds her by the hand. He commands the fever to get out of her. The fever immediately leaves her. She gets up from the bed well, and she goes and starts serving them. That's Jesus' fourth miracle. After Jesus healed Simon Peter's mother-in-law, many people brought their sick, their oppressed, their possessed to Jesus. Jesus healed all the sick, all the oppressed. He delivered all those with evil spirits. He did not allow the evil spirits to speak because they knew who he was. And those were Jesus' fifth miracles. Some people wanted to hear Jesus teach, so he got into a boat and told Simon to pull a little bit away from the land. When he finished teaching, he told Simon to go into deep water. When they got there, he said, cast your net down so you can catch some fish. Simon said, Master, we toiled all night and we did not catch anything. But if you say so, we shall do it. So he put his net in the sea, and a lot of fish were caught, that the net was breaking. So they called the fishermen from the other boats to come and help. So they all came and they pulled all the fish. Even when they poured it into the boat was almost sinking. And they were all amazed at this huge haul of fish. And that's Jesus' sixth miracle. Jesus went up to the hill to teach. And when he came down, a man met him with a skin disease, leprosy. And he bowed and he said, Lord, I know you can heal me if you want to. And Jesus said, I want to. He touched him and immediately the skin disease, the leprosy, disappeared. And Jesus said, go and show yourself to the priest and pay what Moses said you should pay, so that people will know that you are really healed. And that's Jesus' seventh miracle. After Jesus healed the leper, they went to Capernaum, where an army officer's loved servant was very, very sick. So Jesus was on his way to go and heal that servant. But the army officer said, Jesus, you don't need to come into my house. I am not worthy to have you underneath my roof. I'm an army officer. I tell my men, come, and they come. I tell them, go, and they go. They do my bidding. So Jesus, just say the word wherever you are. Command that sickness. It will obey you. You don't need to come under my roof. And Jesus marveled at his faith. And he said, your servant will be well. And the servant immediately received his healing. So you say you don't need to rush to the front of the pulpit for the man of God to touch your head before you receive your healing. Wherever you are at the back, if you have faith, you will receive your healing. That's Jesus' 8th miracle. When people heard that Jesus was in Capernaum, a crowd gathered. The teachers of the law were also where he was teaching. 4 men brought their paralyzed friend, but because of the crowd, they could not get close to Jesus. So they went on top of the roof, they broke a hole, and they lowered him right down in front of Jesus. And when Jesus saw the faith of the men who brought him, he told the paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven. The teachers of law looked at each other and thought, who is he to forgive sins? Only God can forgive sins. And Jesus said, so you know that I also have the authority. Take up your bed and walk. And the paralyzed man got up and he walked, and that was how he was healed. So you need friends who have faith. They can hold you up when you are down. And that's Jesus' 9th miracle. It was the Sabbath day. Jesus was in the synagogue teaching. The Pharisees and the teachers of law were present, and there was a man with a crippled hand in the synagogue. And they looked to see if Jesus would heal on a Sabbath. Jesus, knowing their thoughts, told the man to stand up, and he asked, is it okay to do good or evil on the Sabbath day? Is it okay to heal or to kill on the Sabbath day? If one of you had a sheep that fell into a hole on the Sabbath, won't you pull him out? So he told the man, stretch forth your hand. He did, and the hand immediately got healed. The Pharisees and the teachers of law were not happy. They were thinking of a way that they would kill this man that was healing on the Sabbath. And that was Jesus' 10th miracle. Jesus left Capernaum and went to a city called Nain. It's about 30 miles, 1 or 2 days walk. And when he got there, a funeral procession was ongoing. It was the son of a widow, her only child. And Jesus felt compassion. He walked up to the widow and said, don't cry. And then he touched the coffin. The pallbearer stood still. And Jesus said, young man, get up. And the man immediately sat up in the coffin and began to talk. And Jesus handed him back to his mother. And that's Jesus' 11th miracle. Jesus and his disciples got into a boat to cross over to the other side. And while they were rowing, Jesus fell asleep. And then the storm began. The sea began to rage. The waves was banging against the boat. The water was entering into the boat. The boat almost capsized. They were going to drown. And then the disciples went to Jesus. Master, Master, we're going to drown. Help us, save us. And then Jesus got up from his sleep and he commanded the sea and the waves and the storm, peace, be still. And then there was calm. And the disciples said, who is this man, that even the sea and the waves obey his voice? But Jesus says, oh, ye of little faith, why didn't you believe? And that's Jesus' 12th miracle. After Jesus calmed the storm, they crossed over to the other side, to the land of the Gadarenes, where a possessed man who lived amongst the tombstones came to meet Jesus. He could not be tied down. He could not be chained. He always broke his chain. Nobody could go near him. He knelt down. He said, what do you want from me? Have you come to destroy me before my time? Jesus asked him, what is your name? He said, Legion, because there are many demons inside of him. And the demon begged Jesus, please don't cast us out of this area. So Jesus commanded that the demon should go into the head of pigs. The demons came out of the man, went into the pigs. The pigs ran down the hill and they drowned. The pig keepers were scared and they ran away. And the man sat there in his right mind. That's why the storm was trying to prevent Jesus from crossing there. That was Jesus' 13th miracle. After Jesus healed Legion, they got back in the boat and crossed over to the other side where a crowd was waiting. In the crowd was a woman with an issue of blood. She had been suffering for 12 years without any cure, had spent all her money. She said, if only I can touch the hem of his garment, I'm sure I will be healed. So she pressed into the crowd and she touched the hem of Jesus' garment, and she felt the blood cease immediately. Jesus looked back and said, who touched me? His disciples says, the crowd are pressing against you, and you ask, who touched you? Jesus said, no, somebody touched me, because he felt power come out of him. So the woman came forward, she knelt down and she told her story. And Jesus said, you have been healed and you have been made whole. And that was Jesus' 14th miracle. After Jesus healed Legion and they crossed over to the other side where a crowd was waiting, a ruler of the synagogue, Jairus, actually came to Jesus begging him, come with me to heal my little girl. She's 12 years old. She's dying. Jesus was on the way with Jairus when the woman with the issue of blood interrupted proceedings. After she got healed, Jesus decides to go back with Jairus to his house. Some people came and said, don't disturb the teacher. Your daughter has died. Jesus said, don't be afraid, only believe. Then he went with Jairus to his house where people were crying. Jesus said, she's not dead, she's sleeping. The people laughed him to scorn. Jesus sent them all out. He went to the little girl. He said, Talitha cum, which means little girl, get up. She got up and came back alive. And Jesus handed her back to her dad. And that's Jesus' 15th miracle. After Jesus rose Jairus' 12-year-old daughter from the dead and he was leaving, two blind men followed him. Jesus, son of David, have mercy, have mercy. So Jesus called them and said, do you believe that I can open your eyes? They said, yes, we do. So he touched their eyes and said, because you believe, I will do this. And they received their sight. And Jesus told them, don't tell anybody, just go quietly. But they went and started spreading the news of Jesus everywhere. And that was Jesus' 16th miracle. After the two former blind men left Jesus, some people brought a man to him. This man was mute because he had a demon in him. Jesus cast the demon out of the man, so he was able to speak. The people marveled and said, we have never seen anything like this before in Israel. And that's Jesus' 17th miracle. Jesus went to Jerusalem for a special feast, and he saw lots of sick people lying beside the pool of Bethesda. They were all waiting for an angel to stir the water, and whoever got in first was healed of any diseases they have. And Jesus noticed that there was a man who had been sick for 38 years. Jesus went up to him and said, do you want to be healed? He said, I have nobody to put me in the water when the angel stirs it. Before I get there, somebody else gets in. So Jesus said, get up, pick up your mat and walk. And the man did exactly that, and he was healed. And that's Jesus' 18th miracle. The crowds kept on following Jesus, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he taught them until quite late. The disciples went to Jesus and said, Master, send them into town to get food for themselves, because where we are, there are no shops here. Jesus said, you feed them. Why send them away? And they said, we don't have anything except 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Jesus said, bring those to me. When they gave it to Jesus, he prayed, he blessed the food. He gave it to the disciples. He said, share it out. He made the men and sit on the floor in groups of tens and hundreds. And the disciples shared out the fish and the bread, the fish and the bread. There were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. And at the end, there were 12 baskets left over. And that's Jesus' 19th miracle. After the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus told his disciples to get into the boat and go across, and he would meet them. He went up into the hills to pray. When he'd finished, the boat had gone far from the land. In the early hours of the morning, Jesus started walking on water towards the boat. All the disciples saw him, but they thought it was a ghost, and they were screaming, "It's a ghost, it's a ghost." And then Jesus said, "No, calm down, it is I, don't be afraid." And when they noticed that it was Jesus, they helped him into the boat. And that's Jesus' 20th miracle. After Jesus had walked on water and the disciples had pulled him into the boat, they got to the shore of Gennesaret. Immediately people saw Jesus, they recognized him, and they all rushed and told everybody, "Jesus is here." So people brought their sick. They brought the sick on the mats, they brought the sick to the marketplace, they brought the sick everywhere Jesus went. And they also begged him, "Can we just touch your cloth? Can we just touch the hem of your garment?" And Jesus agreed. So every single sick person that came, those who touched his garment, those he touched, everybody got healed. And that's Jesus' 21st miracles. Jesus left Gennesaret and went to Tyre, about 35 miles. And a non-Jewish woman, a Canaanite, went to him and said, "Master, please help me. My daughter has a demon and she is suffering." Jesus ignored her. The disciples told Jesus, "Send her away because she keeps on following us around and shouting." Then Jesus told her, "I was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. It is not right to give the children's bread to dogs." The woman said, "Yeah, I agree. But even the dogs, they eat crumbs. So just give me a little bit of the crumbs." Then Jesus said, "You have faith. Your daughter has been healed." And the demon left the daughter. And that's Jesus' 22nd miracle. Jesus left Tyre and went to Sidon, about 22 miles away. Some people brought a deaf and dumb man and begged Jesus to lay hands on him, to heal him. So Jesus took the man aside, away from the crowd, so they can be alone. And he put his fingers in his ears. He spat and touched the man's tongue. And then Jesus shouted, "Ephata," which means "be opened." And immediately the man could hear and he could speak. And Jesus commanded the crowd not to tell anybody, but they all went and spread the news, saying they've never seen anything like this before. He opens the deaf ears and the mute speak. And that's Jesus' 23rd miracle. The crowd had been with Jesus for 3 days, and he was reluctant to send them home without feeding them. He told the disciples that they may faint on the way. "Let's feed them. How many loaves of bread do you have?" They said, 7 loaves and a few fishes. Jesus said, "Bring them." He took the food, he gave thanks, he broke them up, told his disciples, "Hand them out." All the men sat on the ground and they gave them food. Everybody was satisfied. There were about 4,000 men, besides women and children. And at the end, there were 7 baskets left over. Note, this is different from the feeding of the 5,000, which was Jesus' 19th miracle. The feeding of the 4,000 is Jesus' 24th miracle. Jesus went to Bethsaida, where some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to heal him. So Jesus led him out of the village. He spat and he touched his eyes. And he said, "What do you see?" The blind man said, "I can see men walking like trees." So Jesus touched his eyes a second time. And then the man said, "I can now see clearly." He was healed. And Jesus told him, "Don't go back into town. Go home." So you see, some miracles, Jesus will do it in front of the crowd. Some, Jesus will send the crowd away before he does it. Some, he will do it just him and the sick person and say, "Don't go back there." So there is no logic to the miracles Jesus did. Anyway, this is Jesus' 25th miracle. Jesus and his disciples were walking when they came across a man who had been born blind. The disciples asked Jesus, whose sin caused him to be born blind, his or his parents? And Jesus said, none of them. He was born blind so that God's glory can be shown in that man. And Jesus spat on the ground. He made mud with the spittle. He put it in the man's eyes and told him to go and wash in the pool of Siloam. So the man went and he washed his eyes and he could see. This particular healing caused a lot of brouhaha between Jesus and the Pharisees. But anyway, this is Jesus' 26th miracle. After Jesus came down from the Mount of Transfiguration, where he met with Moses and Elijah, a man brought his son and said, Jesus, I brought him to your followers, but they could not heal him. He's epileptic. Jesus asked, how long has he been like this? He said, since he was young. He foams at the mouth, he goes stiff, sometimes he falls in the water or he falls in the fire. So Jesus commanded that demon to come out of him with a very loud voice. The demon came out with a scream and he left the boy as if he was dead. Some people actually said he's dead, but Jesus took the boy by the hand and raised him up, and that was how he was healed. The disciples asked Jesus, why couldn't we heal him? Jesus said, your faith is little. And these kind of demons, they only go out by praying and fasting. That's Jesus' 27th miracle. In the book of Numbers, Moses instructed the people from age 20 and above to pay the temple tax. This is to maintain the temple. So Jesus and his followers went to Capernaum, where a temple tax collector went to Peter and asked, does your master pay the temple tax? Jesus told Peter, who pays tax, the children of the king or everyone else? Peter said, everyone else. Then Jesus said, then we're not supposed to pay the tax, but to make them happy and to fulfill all righteousness, go to the river and catch a fish. The first fish you catch, open the mouth. You will find a coin. Take it and go and pay the tax for me and you. And that happened exactly. And that was Jesus' 28th miracle. They brought a man to Jesus who could not see and could not talk. Jesus cast the demon out of him, and immediately he could see and he could talk. So people said, wow, maybe he is the son of David. But the Pharisees said, nah, he's using the power of Beelzebul to cast the demons out. Then Jesus said that because Beelzebul is the lord of the flies, is another name for Satan. So Jesus said that, how can Satan cast out Satan? A house divided against itself cannot stand. If I'm using Beelzebul, what are your fathers casting demons out with? So that's Jesus' 29th miracle. Can you see the cat? Jesus was in the synagogue on a Sabbath day teaching, and he saw a woman who was bent double. She had been like that for 18 years. So Jesus called her and he said, woman, thou art loosed. And he set her free. The demon in her left her immediately, and she could stand up straight. She was no longer double. So the head of the synagogue was angry. There are 6 days to work. You don't need to heal on the Sabbath. Jesus said, you hypocrites. On the Sabbath day, don't you untie your animals to go for water? But a child of Abraham has been bent double, been held captive by Satan for 18 years, and you don't want her to be free. So that was Jesus' 30th miracle. It was the Sabbath day, and Jesus went to the house of a prominent Pharisee to have a meal. They brought a man with dropsy before Jesus. Dropsy is when there's fluids in the body, so it swells up and it can cause a heart attack. They were watching Jesus to see what he would do. So Jesus asked them, is it right or wrong to heal on a Sabbath? They said nothing. So Jesus healed the man with dropsy and sent him on his way. And he told the people there, if your son or animal falls in a well on a Sabbath day, won't you quickly pull him out? And that's Jesus' 31st miracle. Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem when 10 men met him along the way. They did not come close to him because they were lepers, but they shouted, Jesus, Master, have pity on us, heal us. So Jesus said, go and show yourselves to the priests. So as they were going on the way, they received their healing. One of them came back, praising God, rejoicing at the top of his voice. He came before Jesus and he thanked him. And Jesus says, were there not 10 of you? So what happened to the other 9? And he told the one who came back, who was a Samaritan, Your faith has made you whole. And that was Jesus' 32nd miracle. Jesus received the message that Lazarus, Martha and Mary's brother, was sick. They lived in Bethany. But Jesus remained where he was for 2 more days. He told his disciples, "This is for the glory of God." After 2 days, they set out to Bethany. Martha met him and said, "Master, if you were here, my brother wouldn't have died." Jesus said he would live again. Martha said, "Yes, I know, at the resurrection." Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life." He went to the tomb where Lazarus was laid and he wept. And then he said, "Roll the stone away." Martha said, "Lord, he's been there for 4 days. He will be stinking. Roll it away." So they rolled the stone away and Jesus prayed. He said, "God, I thank you because you always hear me. Do this for these people who are here." He shouted, "Lazarus, come forth." And Lazarus came back alive. And that's Jesus' 33rd miracle. Jesus and his disciples are now at Jericho, where there is a blind man, Bartimaeus, begging for money. When he hears that Jesus is around, he starts shouting, "Jesus, son of David, Jesus, son of David, help me." The crowd shush him. "Keep quiet, you're making too much noise." But the more they shush him, the more he keeps on shouting, "Jesus, son of David, Jesus, son of David." Remember the persistent widow. She kept on going to the king, "Avenge me, avenge me, avenge me." Eventually, the king avenges her. He does not keep quiet. Jesus stops. He says, "Call him." The crowd say, "Come, come, come. He's calling you." He goes before Jesus. Jesus says, "What do you want?" He says that my eyes may be opened. I want to see. So Jesus heals him and then he can see again. And that's Jesus' 34th miracle. Jesus and his disciples are now in Jerusalem. When it was getting late, they went to Bethany, about 2 miles. In the morning, when they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry and he saw a fig tree. So he went to the fig tree expecting figs, and there was none because the Bible says it was not the season. So Jesus cursed the tree. He said, "May no one eat from you again." And the tree immediately withered. So you see, in and out of season, God is expecting fruits from us. Jesus will come like a thief in the night. Make sure you are ready. Make sure you have the fruits in you. And that's Jesus' 35th miracle. The time was drawing close, so Jesus went up to the Mount of Olives to pray. The disciples fell asleep. Jesus was talking to them while a crowd came, led by Judas Iscariot. Judas went to Jesus and kissed him. And Jesus said, "Are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" One of the disciples took out his sword and slashed the right ear of the servant of the high priest. Jesus said, "Stop." And he touched that ear and healed it before he was arrested. And that's Jesus' 36th miracle. After Jesus resurrects, he appears on the seashore where the disciples are catching fish. He shouts out, "Friends, have you caught anything?" And they shouted back, "No." He said, "Cast your net on the right-hand side and you'll find some." So they did that, and immediately their net was full of fish, that it was even breaking when they were trying to pull it in. And then John said to Peter, "It's the Lord." And that's how they knew it was Jesus. And that's Jesus' 37th and final miracle. Thanks for sticking with me through all these miracles. God bless you.